Hi, and welcome back to the Mob Mentality Show. I'm Chris Lucian, and Austin Chadwick is my co-host. And today we have Youwen Ouyang, who is a professor at Cal State San Marcos. And Youwen, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and let's get into the discussion.
Sure. I'm Youwen Ouyang, and like Chris was saying, I am a professor of computer science at Cal State San Marcos. And I have been with the university for over 20 years, and I have taught classes from introductory CS class to graduate level courses. My field are in software engineering and mobile development.
All right. And so today we wanted to talk a little bit about you have introduced and implemented mob programming in introductory computer science courses. And so we're going to talk about the challenges and the strategies and the benefits. So maybe you can kind of walk us through how did you get started with mob programming, and then what happened and what led to implementing this with the students.
Sure. So actually, I learned about mob programming in 2014. At that time, I was hosting a women's hackathon for high school and college women. And I was recruiting volunteers from the industry. And there came someone whose name is Woody Zhuo. And he came as a volunteer as one of the mentors. And he was very helpful in terms of like planning the events and things like that. And he talked about mob programming. And I was like, what was mob programming? Because at that time, I heard about pair programming. And there was research that have been shown that pair programming have been successful in many introductory classes to help students engage in helping each other, learning new skills, and so on. So I'd heard about pair programming, but I didn't know about mob programming. And to be honest, I wasn't sure how popular pair programming was even in the industry, even though I read about research regarding the success of pair programming in classrooms. But Woody introduced me to mob programming, and actually as a mentor, he actually engaged his team to do mob programming. And I got to watch that. I was like, this is very fascinating. And after that, I stayed in touch with him, and we talked a few times about mob programming. And then in 2015, I was teaching mobile development class, which is an upper division elective class on our campus. And typically I have about 40 students. And what we have is what we call at that time a collaborative classroom setting. It has 8 table stations. Each station has like a shared computer and a shared monitor. And I have about 40 students. So each table has like 5 students. So I was thinking that's based on what Woody was talking about mob programming. I thought that might be something fun to introduce to my students. And so at that time, I was very lucky that Woody brought in several engineers with him to the class, and they did a workshop on mob programming. They show what like the different roles that people can play and how they can take turns and how to communicate. And they also help my students to do some quick mob session. And I think the fact that the students saw engineers are doing this for sure in their real life really promote that interest. So from that point on, that in the mob programming class that in the mobile development class, that we did some mob programming sessions here and there throughout the semester, depending on what kind of project that I want to do as in-class activities. And then and that's like upper division elective class. So students already have programming experience. A lot of them actually don't have group experience at that time, but they do have programming skills, which is not necessarily related to mobile development, but they do have programming skills. Um, and then in 2018, I received a grant to allow an establishment of a special program called Fab Friday, and that is an extracurricular program and is not related to any class. It is open to mostly junior and senior students. It's application based that we just send out the application, student apply to it. They don't receive any credit. They don't receive any funding. Um, they do receive some food. So we were able to provide some food for students, snacks, and so on. And that like is a pretty big draw. But the biggest draw, I think, for the Fat Friday program is because we were able to work with some of our community partners who send their engineers to work with our students. And and with that, we were very lucky to have Hunter Industry, who I think they do map programming as their regular practice, and they also they were part of the Fat Friday program. They came with the project idea, working with our students, and and they also introduced map programming to the rest of the team. So Fat Friday has multiple projects, but map programming became like a practice a lot of teams adopted in their process. And they meet every Friday from 2:30 to 5 every Friday. So this really allowing us to run the program much more smoothly and also allowing students to really help each other out and knowing where they are, what they need to do after Friday to prepare for next Friday and so on. So that was another time that that was another program that I used map programming. Again, these are juniors and seniors. They typically come with some programming experience. All right. Then the pandemic hit. Uh, and so I used to run after school clubs in high schools. And when the pandemic hit, schools were closed. We couldn't do that anymore. So what happened was that we were trying to find different things. So we ended up deciding to do extended virtual hackathons. We actually have run virtual hackathon for high schoolers 4 times now. The first time was last summer, and then we ran another one in fall 2020, another one in spring 21, and then we just completed one in summer 2021. So the way that we run this virtual hackathon um, is that we have long blocks of days. During the summer, we use 4 consecutive days. Okay. And during this regular semester, we can't do that because students are still in schools. So instead, we did consecutive Saturdays. Um, and in between, we provide office hours for the student teams and things like that. So this is, we're talking about very, um, beginner novice group, right? So this is virtual event for high school students. Some of them may have taken some computer science classes, but a lot of them have not. So we're trying to figure out a way to really engage them and get them to feel like they're part of the teams, and also helping them to support each other and feel comfortable. Again, that a virtual environment is especially challenging. Um, Unlike a in-person environment, when we host after-school program in high schools, a lot of kids kind of know each other, but this virtual environment, which opened the doors for students from all over the places, and they were able to join from different schools. So we put them in different teams so they can meet students from other places and see that they are more more high school girls who are interested in computing, exploring computing, than just their own, close small groups. So that really present a challenge for us in terms of thinking about how we can help these students to feel comfortable. And mob programming actually came in really handy for this process. The students really enjoy learning about the process. Again, we were very fortunate that we had 100 engineers, women engineers too, to do mob programming workshop in in our virtual event. So again, they talk about their roles, they did demonstration, they engage the students to do mob programming session. So that really worked out really nicely. Um, but I would have to say though that um, this was actually a very successful process because the virtual event was we were able to provide one undergraduate mentor per team. Okay. Uh, So that way, when the students are in the, so what we do is that we send students into breakout rooms. So each team is in one breakout room, and then we also send a mentor to go along with them. So when they are doing the mock programming, the mentors are monitoring the process. And they're encouraging students who maybe is not sure what they should say to read, and also maybe like I'm not quite feel comfortable saying something. So that was like really critical to have those mentors there. So the mentors are amazing support, and these mentors are all undergraduate computer science majors. Um, and so it also provide an opportunity for the high school students to really connect with to connect with what we call near peer support. Someone is closer to the age than me, right? So that worked out really nicely.
Wow. So all of that is really, really fantastic, Dr. Owen. I guess before I ask my follow-up question, I just wanted to say that this is a special episode for me because you were a former professor for both of us, right, Chris?
Yep.
Yeah. And so if, my first introduction to test-driven development was through Dr. O in one of her classes, and so a lot of great coursework there. And also, maybe not any of the programs you mentioned specifically, but I have had opportunities to mob remotely with some of the engineers or some of the students. And so that's been a ton of fun. And what I really found super fascinating and novel is that you're having students help kind of facilitate mobs for other students, and that is super, super cool. And it's awesome to see students rise to the occasion and learn how to do what is kind of like a coach level type activity. So in those, whether it was the hackathon or the Fab Friday or any of these kind of mobbing encounters, what were, you mentioned some of the benefits, which was fantastic. What were some of the challenges in introducing mobbing in some of those contexts?
So I think one of the challenges was the hesitation at from different aspects, right? So part of some of the hesitation came from, does this really work? Is it going to help us to finish our project? Right? Are we really going to have like 5 people working on the same thing when we could have done different things? So that's like one thing. Another thing, another hesitation that I have experienced was that the students feel like I do better when I'm not talking. I can do better when I'm talking to myself, but I don't do as well when I'm talking to other people. Um, so other hesitation that I have observed was also that students feel like, what if I can't contribute? What if I don't know enough? What if I made a mistake? What if what my suggestion is really bad? Now everyone knows that I suck. So I think those are the main hesitations that I have observed. But I think what's really great about mock programming is that for students to see that this hesitation is from many people that they don't expect to have that kind of hesitation, right? So when someone said, "I think I suck," and other would say, "I don't think so," because you always like have all these great ideas, and so and also that it's helping them to see it's okay that in the team meeting that sometimes you don't know everything, right? So I think this smart programming really helped to build their self confidence by allowing them to show their weakness, and the the world did not collapse when they couldn't figure out something. Their teammates were there to help them. They you know no one really said bad things about them, so I think it really helped. So that's what my student told me, that so they felt like, oh, it was okay for me not to know things.
That's really hard to accomplish, I think, because I think a lot of the time, especially people, I think maybe in that age category, are always trying to look their best and prevent any surface visuals of weakness, right? So like learning vulnerability is really interesting, and I think, yeah, there's it's really hard to teach vulnerability in general. So I think that's a really fantastic outcome.
Yeah, and even though it is a problem with that age group, I think I've seen it in myself. I've seen it in people of every age. So these students think they're alone feeling this way, but that's been everyone's experience when you first learn to mob or pair or say you don't know things in a group. And I think what a gift you're giving them to be able to learn that earlier, even though it's uncomfortable to learn that earlier is going to be such a benefit to their career. Yeah. So what were some of the things that they did to help overcome that? Was it basically just experiencing it and nothing bad happened, or was there other things that helped them move through that problem?
Well, I think that having this discussion with the teams and helping them uh, to understand in a collaborative environment that the team can move forward if they show respect for each other, right? So the words they use have an impact on other students. So I think our students are naturally very nice, but still they need reminder. Right? So yeah, we talk about like when someone struggle, even either when they are a driver that did not understand the navigator. So like for example, in our virtual hackathon, our mentors talking about like a student who was so new that when the navigator was saying you need to move this block, and they say the name of the block, and she was like, I don't know where that block is, right? And so it could be a driver doesn't know how to handle the the mechanism, or a navigator is like, I don't know what we should do next step. So they're willing to like ask a question. I think just like this rotation kind of helping them to put them in those spots. Because if you just do like a free group uh, collaboration, sometimes you kind of give a pass to someone who is like, okay, I don't want to try that, but we kind of like put them there, and and also we talk to the team. I think we talk how important it is when you are collaborating, how important it is when someone else is in the position to think about yourself, putting yourself in their shoes, and thinking about what if you get stuck, right? You would want other people uh, to kind of help you out, and so we talk about those kind of things, and I think that you know definitely when the students see the positive comments is helping others, I think other students pick up on those. Um, yeah.
So do you, when the students are interacting with each other, and so you had the transition to remote. So did you keep mobbing when you transitioned to remote, or was the extended hackathons something separate and individual?
So, so the program that we talked about earlier, right? Like the Fat Friday program, we actually took a little break from that. For the pandemic, we did something a little different. And the virtual hackathon is actually something we started for the pandemic. So it's all virtual. And I don't teach mobile development anymore. So that I don't do that class anymore. But starting for 2019, I started to teach introductory computer science class.
Yeah.
And that's in general for the CS education. We call it CS1 and CS2. So it's a programming sequence that basically CS1 are talking about most of the mechanisms such as data, variables, and functions, statements, and organizing data and things like that. And then CS2 is starting to introduce more advanced data structure. We're using C++ on our campus. Some other university may use Java and some use Python, different programming language. But typically in the university system, we use one programming language from CS1 to CS2. And so starting from fall 2019, I started to teach introductory classes. For 2019, I only taught one class of 25 students. And that's because I have a project that funded the resource to support that. But typically on our campus, our introductory classes has a large lecture that has about 50 to 60 students in terms of a large lecture. And then the students are broken into lab sections that they meet weekly for lab activities. So so I was only teaching, so I'm teaching just the lecture portion. So typically I have about 52 students in each class. And I would have to say in the past, when I taught CS1 and CS2 many years ago, it was very lecture heavy. So I did most of the talking, and I did design activities for students to do in class. And but those activities are more individualized. Right? So I would say, here's an example that I would like to explain, and also as the lecture, it's classroom paper, right? Many years ago, most students don't have laptop, and so I would say, here's an example, and then what happened is that here's a problem that I like you to solve, and they mostly do it individually. They could ask their neighbor for help. They could ask, things like that. So that's typically what's done. And but I like to kind of make some adjustment to that. I feel like a lot of times students will nod at me and say, yeah, I understand what you say. And when they hear my lecture, they all say, oh, you explain things so clearly. We understand it. And then they went home and they try to do their homework assignment. It's like, I don't know how to solve this problem, right? So I want to change that. So I actually applied for a grant to the California Governor's Office of Planning and Research. So what we hope introduce more active learning in CS1 and CS2. And I thought maybe let's do some programming in those classes. So that's unfortunately. That was for 2019 when I did 25 students, and that worked out really nicely. It was a small classroom, but I wanted to see how it works in a more regular setting. But then spring 2020 is, we all know, it did not run as we had hoped.
Hands out the window.
Yeah, so we couldn't test anything. But for 2020, that's when we started trying this out, and we have to be in a virtual environment, right? I mean, everything was offered in virtuals, and same thing, spring 2021. So CS1, CS2 are offered as virtual, what we call synchronous virtual setting. So that means, we have scheduled time blocks for students to meet with me through Zoom or Microsoft Teams. So we use different platforms at different times. But it's virtual, it's synchronous. And that's when we do some virtual mock programming. So I wanted to give students opportunity to mock things together. Yeah, so it's all virtual right now. And it's going to be continue to be virtual in this coming fall. I will hope to organize some in-person activity at the university if I can get a group of students who are interested in going, because I think we all long for some personal contact. But that would be something that I have to work out with the students to figure out a schedule and things like that. But the regular classes are still going to be synchronous virtual.
Yeah. So in these assignments, so right now in this virtual setting, a group of students on Teams or on Zoom will receive an assignment that they mob together and
during class.
So is there like a mentor similar to the Fab Fridays, or is it different now? How does that work?
Yeah, and so that's why I was mentioning the success of mock programming in the virtual hackathon. A big factor for its success is we have one mentor for each breakout session, like for each mobbing groups. Unfortunately, I have 60 students, and I don't have that kind of funding to support that. So it's really becoming, even though it would be nice to have mentors, but it's really becoming something that really requires students buy-in. And so the reality is there's some mob groups that are doing better than others. There's some mob groups that's not. And there's some students who participated more engagedly than others. So those are the things we're trying to look for ways to think about how we can facilitate that. And but again, I think is the idea is this has to be student driven. Right? They have to have the buy-in to that. What we're hoping, what we have observed is that some students really saw the benefit of that, and they continue to engage, and they also request, can we actually be in the group with some students and things like that. So yeah, I think it shows that students start to see the benefit of it. And also another benefit is that it goes beyond the classroom setting, that students now feel more comfortable asking for help after class.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. And so that's a problem in your classroom, and then we've seen it in the industry as well, because the ideal is what seems to have a higher chance of success, and like many of the mob programming literature and people's experiences, is having a facilitator or coach, or at least someone who's done it before, be part of the mob, right? And it has come up quite a bit where teams are trying it and maybe don't have that option, or it's not a possibility. And so it is a good area to pursue, like, well, how do we give it the best shot possible when it's a bunch of people trying mobbing for the first time and there's no one to guide them? Was there any experiments you ran as far as giving them guidance before they got started mobbing, and how have those experiments gone?
Yeah, so definitely that it's like we talk about a teaching strategy saying like I do, we do, you do, right? So it's important for them to see examples. Just like when we're teaching things, we explain here's how the if statement work. Right? So we need to do the same thing as here's how mobbing works. And here's this is what happened if I have to solve this problem. Like what would I do as as a driver? What would I do as a navigator? So really, need to explain that, and also need to so what we also do. So I do have TA. I can't assign a TA for every single breakout rooms, but we do like mock mob, uh, to show how things are done. And then we also ask student volunteer, like there's be times that as a whole class we'll watch some group mobbing together. So it will be like still like a whole room. And then we'll just ask some student to say, okay, so this is a problem that we're going to solve together. So how do we solve this? So by doing this process, is that we're asking students to teach the content while they do the mobbing. So that their mock mobbing session is not like on a random, irrelevant, topic, but the topic we want to teach. And so it's kind of like a real time, real life kind of thing to say, okay, who's gonna drive and what happens? Because I think that definitely have a drawback though, because most people who are willing to volunteer to be put in that position who feel more comfortable. So I'm thinking that next semester, I'm going to kind of random pick students and say, you have to do this. And, but to make it clear that, that it is a learning process, because a lot of time when you only see a smooth run of something, you think that if your run is not exactly the same, you fail, right? But if you saw people have encountered different things, then you recognize my mobbing session is, it's not that bad because it's expected. Something not as smooth could happen.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely, something I would like to try is because I think asking for volunteers, there's a little drawback there.
Yeah. So I agree. And I think I see this just naturally when working with mobs. A lot of the times you'll have like the same people volunteering over and over again. I'm sure you see this in the academic setting as well. But the randomization, I do think really helps. And that was actually what I was going to suggest anyway when I heard you talking. It's even good to at times kind of rotate roles for people, and so give some people an opportunity to maybe have a list of behaviors or a checklist to run through of is everybody speaking about equally? Have we talked about have we talked about the problem? Is there an elephant in the room? These are all things that I think that we've noticed while doing our work that it's always good to ask these questions and just reflect during the day. So but it sounds really interesting for the direction that it ended up going. And it is one of those things where the pandemic has been like this forced experiment that we had no choice but to participate in a lot of the things that we ended up encountering. So Austin, do you have anything else?
No, I think we'll give her a chance to plug something, then close it out. But what I was just going to say is, it's thank you so much for hosting classes and running these different ways of trying to run the class, because it's good for us all to learn, and then sharing it with people, because it's something that Chris and I will debate every once in a while, which is the randomization versus volunteering. And so, maybe your data will convince one side or the other. So it'll be good.
We're looking forward to it.
But is there anything you'd like to plug or share before we close out the show?
No, I think I just feel like this really gives students a great opportunity, but because it's something uh, very different from most of the CS1 class being run, or CS1 or CS2, it does take additional planning to offer these activities. Because you have to think about, is the challenge interesting enough? Does it allow multiple students to contribute? Uh, how much time do you allocate for that? Sometimes we would do an activity when we say, okay, that there's no rotation for this particular one, but the next part of the class, then you rotate. So there's like a lot more planning that needs to go in. Uh, and uh, yeah, and it would be nice if we can get support in terms of like additional, monitoring and things like that. But again, that student can rise up to the occasion, and I think there are students who would just, I think, that develop their leadership to to think about, I can be that person, right? I can be participating in mobbing, and I also can be that person to help other students to see the benefit, to really get other people talking. So that leadership building, I think it's there. I need to make it more specific to help them to see what an important skill that is in the professional life. But it does take more planning, but I think the reward is worth it.
Oh, fantastic. Well, yeah, thank you for sharing honestly your experiences with the benefits and challenges of this. And, yeah, thanks for sharing that. And then thanks for, continuing to pay it forward. So obviously me and Chris are indebted to, what you've done in our lives and our education. And if anybody out there wants to pay it forward as well and share about, pass along Dr. O's stories on how mobbing can help students learn better in the classroom. And yeah, please share it. Please like and subscribe. And we love seeing your comments on YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and all the places. And we just love hearing the feedback. And until next time, everybody, mob well and have a good one. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.